All right. Welcome again, everyone. It's so great to see you all this evening. If you're joining us tonight, it's probably because you have a little one at home who's going to be starting pre-K with us this fall, and we are so excited to welcome you all to the DCPS community. Our goal tonight is to provide you with some information about children's experiences in our pre-K program so that you're familiar. You'll know what to expect. You'll be able to help them understand what to expect and what you all can anticipate for the start of the year. So we'll share an overview and some general information about our programming so that you have as much information as possible before August 31st on the first of school. And then we'll also have time for questions at the end. In the meantime, you are more than welcome to go ahead and put some questions in the chat, and we will answer them as we go, but we'll also have time at the end for you to come off mute, and then we can answer your questions then as well. We can go ahead, Drew. All right, so let's get started. So during our time together this evening, you'll see here what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about getting ready for pre-K at DCPS. So we'll talk about some things that you can do in the next several weeks to get yourself ready and to get your little one ready and your family ready as well. We'll talk about some things that you can do in general to support your child's learning at home over the summer. I know the summer is actually starting to wind down, but these are actually strategies that you can use for the rest of the summer and throughout the school year to help your child keep learning. And then we'll talk about some specific strategies, things you can do in these next few weeks to help prepare yourself and prepare your child for the start of pre-K. And as I mentioned before, we'll leave some time for some questions at the end. Okay, so before we jump in, let's take a moment to reflect on how you are doing as the parent. So for many parents and families in general, starting pre-K can be overwhelming, whether or not this is your very first time sending a little one off to school, or you've done this before with older siblings. This can be a time we'll have some anxiety, some stress for both you and for your child. So one of the best things that you can do to help prepare your child is also to think about yourself and your own emotions and things like that. So you can take a breath, take care of yourself, and then you'll be better able to take care of your child as well. So whether you've done this many times before with older children, or if this is your very first go round, starting pre-K can bring up a lot of questions, a lot of emotions. So if you are feeling brave enough, we would love to have you take a moment to unmute or comment in the chat and tell us how you're doing. So as parents and as caregivers getting ready to send your littlest one off to pre-K, what's coming up for you? What is front of mind for you? Welcome you to come off mute. You can also put it in the chat.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Please, yes, go ahead.
Hi, so I have 4-year-old twins who will be going into pre-K. They have been in daycare since they were 5 months. It's kind of set up like school, like the whole pre-K 3 situation, but it's not exactly like a pre-K classroom. I actually work for DCPS as well, so it's still more so daycare. And one of the things that's kind of like troubling me is like I'm not sure if I should keep them in the same classroom because they gave me that option, and I'm like I'm kind of afraid to separate them, but I feel like it might be best. But I'm just a little unsure, a little uneasy about that.
Yep, understood. So we're in just a moment, we're going to talk about some social emotional development skills, and that might be a good time to come back to that. And Miss Massey, I might invite you in a few minutes also to give your thoughts on that. I don't know if you've had that experience in your classroom at all, but we'll come back to that. I can understand your anxiety and trying to figure out what's the right decision there. We'll come back to that. Anyone else interested in
Thank you.
mute? I see some comments, anxious but excited. Drew, anything else in the chat you want to highlight?
Oh, no, I think, yeah, I think we're all probably feeling anxious and excited. I was sharing with the group earlier that I felt very confident when my little one went into pre-K because that's the world I know. But now that she's going into kindergarten, I feel like I can empathize with all of you about knowing quite as much.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. So we'll go ahead and keep going. I'm seeing a lot of anxious and a lot of excited at the same time, which is completely completely understandable. So there's a lot that we can do as adults to set the tone for our children. You know, as parents and caregivers, that children pay very close attention to the adults in their lives. Even when we don't realize that they're paying attention, they're picking up on our cues, they're picking up on our emotions. So it's good to take some time to just reflect on how you're feeling right now, and how you can support them in this process. Some of the things that can be helpful, as you see here on the slide, making a list of questions that you have for the school, for your child's teacher, that you can ask them during your family visit. We'll talk a little bit later this evening about what those opportunities are to get those questions answered. Jot down some ideas as we go along this evening, some ideas that you hear, some things that you want to come back to, some strategies to help yourself get ready, help your child get ready. Spend some time on your school's website. If you haven't done that already, you can find some really helpful information there. A lot of schools will be offering opportunities to connect with children and families in the next several weeks. Play dates, book clubs, learning parties, virtual meet and greets, home visits, that type of thing. So between now and August 1st, you should have at least one opportunity to connect with your child's teacher, to connect with other staff at the school, and get your questions answered, and also start building those relationships. And you are always welcome to reach out to us. You're welcome to email us with any questions or concerns you might have, whether it's before the start of school or in the middle of the school year. We are always more than happy to answer questions and to connect with families. We have an entire family services team. Our friend Lauren, who's on this call and introduced us tonight, leads that team, and it is a group of amazing professionals dedicated to supporting our pre-K families. So we'll drop our email in the chat. So if you do have questions after this evening at any time during the school year, please feel free to reach out to us. All right, so we know that some children may be very familiar with the idea of school, whether they are returning for their pre-K 4 year after having been with us last year in pre-K 3, or like the twins that we heard about just a moment ago, they may have been in some version of school, whether it's childcare or something like that before. And some little ones just have experience with older siblings who have come to school, so they may be familiar with the school building already. Others may not have this familiarity, and this may be a very new process and experience for them. So before we jump into the details of what the daily schedule is, we'll start with some general tips for introducing the start of pre-K to your child, and some helpful strategies that can support them in understanding what going to pre-K means and what they can do to get ready. All right, so here are some tips and strategies you see on this slide that you can use to prepare your child for this transition, especially as we go through these next several weeks. These are some really helpful tips. The first, share the news. You've probably done this already, but if not, this might be a good time. Children are all different, and so some children need a lot of lead time, a lot of advance notice, a lot of conversation to get accustomed to the ideas. For some children, that might just cause more anxiety, and it might be better to wait until just a week or two before school. Similarly, some children are going to want to talk about it a lot, and so lots of repetition, lots of conversation might be helpful. And for other children, all that talk and conversation might be a little bit more anxiety producing, so it might be better to just mention maybe once a day or read a few books between now and school, but not overwhelm them with conversation about starting school. So you are the experts on your child, you know your children best, and so really you are the best person to determine what's going to be most helpful for your little one over these next few weeks as they get ready. Talk about what will be the same and what will be different. So as human beings, we all just naturally connect new experiences to previous experiences that we've already had. So it can be really helpful to start helping your child make those connections. So for example, you can talk about what's going to be the same when they start school with their current experiences. For example, you might say some of the things that are the same with your new school is going to have a playground just like your current school. There will be grown-ups there to help take care of you during the day. You'll take a nap after lunch, just like in your daycare or at Miss Rosa's house, or at grandma's house, wherever they happen to be. Start to make those connections for them so they understand that this is a new experience, but there's going to be a lot that's familiar. You can think of now about what you want to send them with. You will probably, if you haven't already, be receiving a communication from school about sending a change of clothes, sending a blanket, sending a pillow, something like that for their nap time. So you can talk about how they'll have those materials at school with them as well. Show them pictures of the front of the school building. So take a trip to school, take some photos, keep the photos on your phone, maybe print them out, make a little booklet, something like that. Visit the playground, visit the front door. So again, they become familiar with the environment, and then you can revisit it over and over and over again over these next couple weeks. Talk to them about what it feels, how they're going to feel on that first day. They'll feel excited about it. They may feel a little bit nervous, that type of thing. So they're developing that familiarity. We can go ahead to the next one. And I'm going to pass it over to Miss Massey.
All right. So next we are going to get into the meat and potatoes that everybody has had lots of questions about. What happens at a pre-K day in DCPS? So we're going to look at some of the key parts of the pre-K day and talk about what happens exactly during these times. Some skills children use during this component of the day and how to support them in preparing for what they can expect so they can feel more confident. Here you'll get a sense of what the daily schedule looks like in our pre-K classrooms. And we're going to go into a little more detail about what each of these daily activities looks like, but all of our classrooms have similar components. Most programs use creative curriculum, which centers on studies or project-based learning, except for our Montessori programs. You'll notice on this list of activities the term special. On this part of our daily schedule refers to our special classes like music, art, PE, drama, dance, library. Each school offers different special subject classes. So you can get more information on which classes your school offers when you attend your play date. And except for PE, all special subject classes take place inside of our pre-K classrooms to eliminate transitions. This is really great because the children are in their environment, they're with their furniture and materials that are their size, and the teachers come to us to do the activities that they have planned for our students. The specials teachers are doing age-appropriate activities that help extend children's learning and are fun during those 45-minute classes. Each school's daily schedule does differ a bit depending on the order. So some schools may have specials in the morning, others may have specials in the afternoon. The playground schedule differs from school to school, but most programs will follow these listed activities, just not necessarily in this particular order. So, what happens during morning arrival? The first part of the school day is obviously arrival, and this is a time of day that we get a lot of questions about, understandably so, especially that first day of school. Parents and children really want to know what to expect during this transition. I'm going to be able to give you a general overview of what is most likely could happen at your school, but to actually get a detailed explanation of what happens, you will need to contact your school. If you're having trouble contacting your school, you can reach out to the ECE email address and they can help you as well. But typically, pre-K children arrive at school between 8:15 and 8:45, depending on the program or if they attend before care, because some schools do have before care programming. At some schools, children and families arrive at a designated entrance, and at other schools, children will be dropped off at their classroom by their parent. At every single school, you will need to sign your child in when you hand them off to a school staff member. If your school meets in a designated area like the playground or a specific entrance, that staff member that meets your child will walk them to the classroom. No matter the procedure at your school, your child is never left unsupervised, and they will never have to navigate the routine alone. Once children get to the classroom, they put their belongings away, wash their hands, and then they have a choice if they want to eat breakfast or play until other children arrive. Again, you can learn more about your school's specific routine and procedure by either attending the play date, asking the teacher when they call to do a home visit, reaching out to the main office, or if you're having trouble connecting with your school, reaching out to us, ECE. So there's a few ways you can help your child prepare and feel a little more comfortable for those first few arrivals and drop-offs. There may be a few tears, but our teachers are more than ready to comfort upset children and maybe a few parents too. Here are some ways that we can help school feel a little bit more familiar before that first day, so it's a little less scary. Most schools are currently offering play dates. I've mentioned them and Cheryl mentioned them. And these usually take place during the month of August so that children, families, and teachers can meet before the start of the school year. That way, they're not going to meet or be with adults they've never seen before. Make sure to check your school's website or call the main office for specifics about your school's play date schedule. Having a chance to meet the teacher in person and some other children in advance goes a long way in helping children feel more comfortable on the first day. And it's always reassuring to see a familiar face. One thing I always like to do during play dates is take pictures of you with your child, of your family, so they're in the cubby on the first day of school. So that way, when they arrive, they are already seeing in their cubby that their family is present and an important part of our classroom. Many programs also offer home visits prior to the start of school, and these can be done virtually or in person or at a public location like a playground or a library. This is truly just a relaxed opportunity to interact with your child's teacher one-on-one and get to know each other. Home visits are a great time for your child to meet their teachers and for you to share some information about your child, like what they like, ways they prefer to be comforted when they're upset, or if you have very specific questions about the classroom routine, that's a great time to do it outside of that first day of school when things could get a little hectic and everybody's getting dropped off at the same time. And lastly, as the first day of school approaches, practice your daily routine and think about creating a special goodbye ritual with your child that you can do each day when they go to school. Having a plan for this transition is really important for both you and your child. This might be a special thing you say to each other, like see you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile, or a hug and a high five, etc. Practice this ritual in advance and remind your child, then you'll stay with your teachers and I'll wave goodbye. But don't worry, I'll be back at the end of the day and you can tell me all about what you did at school. So once we arrive and we've had breakfast, every classroom has a morning meeting. What is a morning meeting? It's not quite like a morning meeting you might have at your office. Typically, it's our opening group or our circle time where we greet each other. We'll usually do a feelings check-in, review our daily schedule. This helps kind of anchor our day for the children so they can know what to expect is going to come next, what we're going to do later. And then when I'm going over the daily schedule at the end, I always go, and then you get to see mommy and daddy, especially because there might still be a couple children who are struggling with that transition. We usually discuss a focus question related to the topic that we're studying. For example, if we're studying buildings, we may discuss a building we saw on our way to school. We usually engage in a music and movement activity to get our wiggles out. We don't want to just sit. We like to move and express our bodies. And then sometimes we have a group learning activity or a game that we play prior to going into our small groups or our centers. And what happens during center time and small groups? So our pre-K classrooms are very carefully and intentionally designed to support active, hands-on playing and learning. Each classroom includes a variety of learning centers that are thoughtfully planned out by teachers, such as the ones listed on this slide. Each day, children are empowered to choose which center they would like to play in. And in those centers, they direct their own play and learning. The role of the teacher and the assistant teacher at this time is to engage and play in the centers, asking questions, and incorporating learning into play. Teachers frequently are adding new materials to the centers to provide children with new experiences and to keep them interested and engaged. Frequently, teachers lead small group lessons while other children are independently working and playing in centers under the supervision of the assistant teacher. Small groups give children the opportunity to practice and hone in on specific skills they may be working on. For example, I might pull a group of 3 children that are all working on the same letters of the alphabet, or who might have been absent for a lesson that I taught previously for phonics. So I'll pull that group and work with them while my co-teacher or my assistant teacher is circulating the other children who are working independently in centers. Once they're done working with me for that 8 to 10 minutes, then they return to their center and I might call another group over. Each one of those small group lessons are very thoughtfully planned out based on the data I've taken and what students need to progress developmentally based on the skill that I've chosen, whether it's an early literacy or math or language skill, or we're working on writing or fine motor. All of those things are touched upon in the pre-K classroom. And Cheryl's gonna take us to work on working and playing with our friends.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So we'll take a moment to talk about the skills that children will use during the activities that Miss Massey has walked us through, like morning meeting, center time, small group work. Those are all designed to make sure that children are developing language skills, social emotional skills, math skills, everything that they'll need for success in school. So we'll touch on a few areas of development that they'll use this throughout the year in pre-K and then beyond in kindergarten as well. We can go to the next one. All right. So I mentioned social emotional skills previously. So social and emotional skills are really among the most important skills that kids can develop during pre-K, even before pre-K. So we know that literacy and math and all of those things are really important for success in school, but social emotional skills are actually among the most important skills. So children who develop a strong foundation in social emotional skills in pre-K tend to do much better in kindergarten and beyond. So we really spend a lot of time and a lot of our focus on these skills in pre-K, especially in the beginning of the year. So in the first several weeks of schools, teachers really aren't even worrying about like the small group lessons, the database small group lessons that Miss Massey mentioned. They really are just focusing on helping children acclimate, building relationships, and developing these social emotional skills. And then after a few weeks, those lessons come into play. So we know these are really, really important. Many children start pre-K and even kindergarten for that matter, never having been in a care setting outside their home, and it's an adjustment for sure. But just know that our priority is always to meet children where they are. So it really doesn't matter if your child is coming with lots of experience in a large group of children, or if this is a very new experience for them, or if just developmentally they're just in very different places. Some children are more emotional than others, and some children have a harder time with new experiences than others, and that's all fine. Teachers are used to that. Teachers are prepared for it. And are ready to embrace your children starting on the first day of school and support them through this transition. So these are some things that we can start doing now at home and that your teachers will continue to do during the year to support them. So one of the most important things is establishing consistent routines. So especially thinking about what Ms. Massey just walked us through, what the pre-K day will look like. So start to think about that and think about things that you can do now in these next several weeks to establish really consistent routines. We know that can be hard in the summertime, especially sometimes our routines just aren't as predictable as they are during the school year. So now's the time to start implementing those routines. Children find comfort and safety in routine and in predictability. We've said it a million times because it really is powerful. Just remember that establishing a routine is important for the adults in the household too. So if getting to school on time means a significant change in how your mornings are going currently, probably now's the time to start moving towards a new schedule over the summer, getting yourself up a little earlier, getting your little one up a little bit earlier, helping them get used to the same routine that they're going to have to do when school starts to get ready for school in the morning. This will help everybody have a smoother transition. It's also a good time to start practicing identifying, naming, and talking about handling emotions. So even for children who have had years of experience in some sort of care setting previously, this can be a big transition. So this is a great time to start talking about those emotions, whether it's excited, some of the emotions that you all put in the chat a little bit earlier this evening, excited, a little bit anxious, a little bit scared, helping children to become familiar with those feelings and with those words. Help them to recognize and name those emotions, and then talk about how you feel as well. So you're modeling that and helping your child develop an awareness of how others feel. Practicing handling those big feelings by taking deep breaths, taking a walk, counting to 5, closing your eyes, yoga, whatever works for you as a calming strategy. So thinking about what you do when you're feeling stressed to start to calm yourself and settle yourself. Great idea now to start modeling those strategies if you haven't done that already for your child, so they can become familiar with just the idea that there are things that we can do to calm ourselves down, to calm our bodies down, that type of thing, cuddling a stuffed animal, that type of thing. So think about what works for you, think about what works for your child, and just start to practice those strategies. Also great time to start modeling and practicing positive social skills at home. So you probably have been doing this since your child's birth, whether you're aware of it or not. This will probably be nothing new at all. Even if there are not other children at home, we can still model and reinforce social skills as adults. Practicing manners, for example, when interacting with your child or when you're interacting with other adults in the household, with your friends and extended family members. Practice taking turns, saying things like, may I take a turn with the toy? Or first I'll stir the soup and then you'll have a turn to stir the soup. So they start to get familiar with this language about sharing. Playing board games, collaborative games that help children take turns, waiting and sharing, getting them used to those ideas if they haven't had experience with that. And as Sarah mentioned, attending the play dates. So you will have an opportunity for a formal play date at school, but also take advantage of opportunities just to visit the playground on your own, visit a splash park, a library for a story hour, opportunities for your child to interact with others if they haven't had that experience already. Attending a play date at the school with another family, for example. Any opportunity your child has to interact with peers is a great way to build their confidence and skills. Before we move on to talk about language in just a minute, I wanted to go back just quickly to the comment that Miss Rush, I hope I'm getting your name correctly, Miss Rush, about the twins. I know that can be a hard decision. I think oftentimes the recommendation is that they do go into separate classrooms so that they're able to start developing their own identities, developing their own friends and that type of thing. But you know your child best, your children best, and you may be able to talk with your teacher now or with the school leaders now in the coming weeks to make that decision about what's going to work best for them. Many of our teachers have experience with this, so if you do make the decision to put them in separate classrooms, your teacher will be familiar with the fact that they are twins. This is going to be a new experience, and make sure to have opportunities for them to connect frequently during the day, especially early in the year. I want to open it up also, Miss Massey or Lauren or Drew, anything you'd add to that as a consideration for twins?
I would just say talk with your school and reiterate what Cheryl said. You know your children best. If they've been in the same class all through daycare, it might be a great opportunity in pre-K prior to going to kindergarten to see how they do in 2 separate classrooms. But I would just connect with the school and share with them about each of your children, and then see what plan is going to work best for your children, because every situation is slightly different.
So I've been actually trying to contact the school, but no one's answered. Sorry, one of the twins is crying. But no one has answered. I've left messages. No one has returned my call. I've contacted their SPED coordinator via email. No response. Well, I'm assuming she's the SPED coordinator. That was on the site, but I haven't received a response from anyone because that was my thing. I was like, okay, I think that we are going to go into separate classrooms. No one has responded.
Got it. Well, if you could, I think one of my colleagues put our email address in the chat. If you can go ahead and just send us your name and your school, we can go ahead and help facilitate that connection for you to make sure that there's somebody you can talk to before the start of the school year.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, we can go ahead on to the next one. All right, so I just talked about how important social emotional skills are, and now I'm going to talk about language skills, which are just as important. So fun fact about language skills is that language skills are really among the most important skills your child can develop in pre-K. They're even more important than how many letters your child knows before they go to kindergarten. So we all think about letters and we want our child to learn their letters and we want them to be able to write their name, and those skills are important, but language skills are actually even more important. So one of the best things that you can do now and for the next several years to come is talk to your child as much as you can. Use big words, talk about ideas, talk about things that you see. Those language and communication skills are so important for their ability to engage with others, connected to those social emotional skills, and also for their literacy, their ability to learn to read down the road, even math skills and things like that. So lots of conversation is really, really important. Engage them in back and forth conversations. So just like we were talking about with stirring the soup, make sure that they'll say something, you respond, give them the opportunity to respond as well. So they have that experience almost like a tennis match or something like that, or going back and forth. See how many exchanges, how many of those back and forth exchanges you can carry on with your child. Thinking out loud. So even if your child is not very verbal yet, we know, especially the little ones at the age of 3, they may just not have that many words yet. They may be not talking that much yet, and that is totally fine, totally normal. You keep talking anyway. So even if you sound like you're going to drive, or you're thinking that you're going to drive everybody crazy with talking so much, just keep talking. Talk about what you're doing. Sort of be like the sportscaster to just describe what you're doing throughout the day as you're cooking, as you're waiting for the bus. Talk about the things that you see, describe what you see. It can be as simple, talk about your feelings. It can be as simple as, I'm feeling frustrated about all this traffic. I think I'll take some deep breaths to calm down. Or when you're cooking, first I'm going to add the noodles. Now I'm going to stir them. I'll set the timer for 10 minutes. Just keep describing what you're doing so they have that opportunity to hear that language and to be constantly flooded with that language. Ask open-ended questions. So those are questions that require more than a one-word answer. So not just yes and no questions, but questions about what they think might happen in a movie, for example. What do you think is going to happen next in this book? Or as you're reading a book, or your child is drawing a picture, tell me about your picture. Help your child describe that. And again, just lots of words, using a variety of words. You may think that some of those vocabulary words are too advanced for 3- and 4-year-old children. Use them anyway. Describe them. Describe what they mean to your child. That really does help them to develop a much bigger vocabulary, which is really, really helpful as they go through school. And lastly, going back to what I mentioned a moment ago about social emotional skills, practice expressing those ideas, feelings, and needs. Again, encourage your child to use words to express themselves. Talk about those emotion words and what they mean. Talk about their ideas, their feelings, and their needs. Being able to communicate these things to their teachers and their peers at school will help them to feel more confident and empowered in the classroom. All right.
Before we move on,
yes,
there's a couple parents who, families who are talking about the multiple languages that they speak. So they may speak a different language in the home versus, so do you mind touching on just highlighting how positive it is and how encouraged it is to continue speaking your home language?
Absolutely. Yes. I think that's it. That's what I was going to say, Lauren, is please continue to use your home language. It's so important for children to develop that home language. If they are not exposed to much English language yet, they will be. That will develop in pre-K. They're going to be flooded with language, with English language in pre-K, and that will come. But it's wonderful for children to develop that home language as well. studies actually show that children who are bilingual, children who become strong in both their home language and in English as well, do better in reading down the road. They do better in math. They develop stronger social emotional skills, stronger social skills. So it really is such an incredible gift that you're giving your child if you're helping them to develop, to keep that home language and to keep developing it as they go through their school years. Colleagues, anything else you'd add to that?
No, I think you really hit it on the head there. And then just one other note here, and I think just another concern that someone expressed about their child being born in August, so being, maybe one of the youngest kiddos who are coming in the classroom. And I know Miss Massey spoke a lot earlier about just how skilled the teachers are with differentiating based on where your child is. And so we hear that a lot from parents. And so Ms. Massey, if you want to add to that, of course, please feel free to, but the teachers really take time and consideration to spend a lot of time they're with your kids all day, of course, but those first few weeks of school are really learning about where your student is, and then how the teacher can tailor the activities, those small groups Ms. Massey described, to move at the pace that your kiddo's at.
Absolutely. One of the beautiful things about early childhood is that almost everything is done in small groups and individuals. So as a parent, you may be thinking back to your own school experience. And I know when I was in school, which was forever ago, there was a lot of whole group, a lot of students sitting at desks all together learning the same thing. That is very, very rare, almost never, if never, happens in a pre-K classroom. Kids are all together for morning meeting, sometimes for read aloud and things like that. But the rest of the learning really does happen through play, and it happens through the small groups that Ms. Massey talked about earlier. So teachers are able to meet your child where they are.
Thanks, Cheryl. So one of my favorite things to highlight that's really unique to DCPS is what happens during meal times. We think of meal times are just another opportunity for schools and for children while they're at school to learn, to continue their learning. Excuse me, I'm feeling tongue-tied today. We do what we call family style meals. So this basically means that the children and the adults will all sit together and enjoy conversation while they're eating. Teachers might be asking them what they brought from home or what's being served at school, what it tastes like, what the textures are, what it smells like. So we think of it as just another learning opportunity and a place where kids get to try new foods and learn about healthy eating habits. At our Title I schools, the free breakfast and lunch are provided to all students. Our non-Title I schools offer opportunity for children to purchase a school lunch. Typically, schools will post or send home copies of the school lunch menus to families so you know what's coming for the month. Alternatives are also offered for students who may have some dietary restrictions. Parents can fill out a dietary restriction form at the school, and families are also welcome to send food from home for your child if you prefer that. All meals are prepared by the school are peanut and tree nut free. And if there are other allergies present in the classroom, the teacher will inform families so that they know, not to bring those allergens into the classroom. And another hot topic that families, many of you already wrote to us about, is what's happening at nap time. And so knowing that many 3- and 4-year-olds still nap during the day, we do have a rest time after lunch. For pre-K3 classrooms, we allow 90 minutes of rest, and pre-K4, there's 60 minutes allotted. For children who don't nap, they'll be provided quiet activities to do during that time. So that might be puzzles, coloring, reading. Pre-K classrooms have either cots or mats for every child, and they get wiped down every day with sanitizer after use. The cots are typically spaced about 2 feet apart, and they're placed head to toe. And Cheryl mentioned this, I think, at the top of our meeting, but you're welcome to send a cozy blanket, a small pillow that your child can use during nap time. The personal items are then placed back in the child's cubby each day, and then they'll be sent home to be washed at the end of each week. And the other hot topic that families are often asking about, this came through a lot from you too, which we expected, is just what are restroom breaks looking like? What are the expectations around toileting? If your child has not been into a childcare program, this is often the first thing that parents are asking. So we wanted to start first by reminding you that potty training is not required to start school. Is it helpful? Absolutely. But if your child isn't there yet, we will work with you through this process. We encourage you to talk with your child's teacher about this to make sure that the two of you are aligned on working on toileting together. If your child is not yet potty trained, families can send wipes and pull-ups to school. Regardless of whether your child is potty trained or not, it will be important to send a clean change of clothes just to have in their cubby, because accidents happen and kids get very excited in those centers and sometimes forget. Most of our classrooms have a children's restroom that is in the classroom itself that kiddos can access freely throughout the day. A few of our older schools have hallway restrooms with multiple stalls. These programs tend to take the whole class for restroom breaks periodically throughout the day. We do expect the adults in the classroom to maintain both sight and sound supervision of kiddos at all times. So classrooms may have like a half a door or a shower curtain up so that adults can hear if a child needs help when they're toileting, but also maintaining the children's privacy. If children do need assistance, teachers and assistant teachers will help them either by talking them through what to do, handing them the materials that they may need, or physically assisting them if the child requires it, especially for students who may have physical or developmental delays. Teachers will use gloves when they need to assist with changing and toileting. And so we want to just make sure that kind of how we're addressing that. And Ms. Massey, I'll pass it to you to continue on, but also add if you have anything else that you want to address as it relates to toileting.
I think just to reiterate what you shared about making sure that you're openly communicating with your child's teacher. Every single child is different. It's okay if your child is not yet even close to being potty trained yet, and maybe you're panicking a little bit because you've been working on it for a really long time, or what you feel like's been a while and your child, it's just not quite happening. That's okay. We see those children every single year. The most important part is the partnership and open communication between school and home to make sure that we're using the same language, the same type of routine. And so your child is getting consistency in both places and support that's developmentally appropriate for their needs. So we can go on to the next slide and we can talk about some ways to support your child in their growth at home. So practicing and encouraging self-help skills is a great way to help your child start preparing for school, and so they'll feel confident. Sometimes we get really focused on academic skills. Do they know enough letters? That we forget that they're 3 and 4. So learning how to take care of your own needs and build independence is just as important for confidence and success in pre-K. So, let's consider what do meal times look like for your child right now, and how might those expectations be different at school? For example, does your child use utensils? Do they use an open mouth cup regularly? Do they have practice sitting in a traditional chair at a table rather than being in a booster seat? These are things that you might gradually practice over the coming weeks. So once school starts, your child has been introduced to these skills. Toileting, to go back to that one, we know that being potty trained is not a requirement, but even if your child is not fully potty trained, there's other aspects you can work on, like dressing, taking their pants down or their pull-up on or off themselves, washing their hands after a change, and actually following those hand washing steps. After your child, and if your child is potty trained, think about how toileting might look different at school. For example, are they able to manage their pants on their own, or do they need help with the zippers and buttons? Have they used a traditional toilet before, or have they only used a potty chair? Do they attempt to wipe themselves? Do they need coaching through wiping? Some children we've gotten children whose parents say, can you just verbally remind them to wipe, because we're not quite 100% on that yet. And are they able to properly wash their hands afterwards? Practice and encourage cleaning up at home. So as you can imagine, in pre-K 3, we have 16 children. In pre-K 4, we have 17 children, 20 children, and in mixed age, we have 17. And there's 2 of us during cleanup time. So it's very important that we teach children how to independently clean up after themselves. Encouraging your child to help put away their toys at home or take care of their own belongings, like learning how to hang up their coat or hang up their book bag, is a great independent step that's very helpful when they come into the classroom. And then most importantly, knowing how to ask for help. That's an important skill for everyone, especially our youngest children. Some children are very shy and may not be comfortable or asking for help. And it's really important that you as a parent reiterate at home and encourage them to ask for help from their teachers when they're in a task, when they're working on a task that might be difficult, or they encounter a social situation, like not another child who may not share. Those things happen, and some children are not comfortable asking for help. So we are here to help them problem solve and to comfort them and to create that trusting relationship. But it's helpful when parents are also our partner in that. And I know we had some, I saw the chat popping up. Did I hit all those questions? I didn't. Okay.
Yes, lots of questions around toilet learning. I'm scrolling the chat to make sure we've got everything answered. And I also put a plug in the chat for, we did a whole session last year on toilet learning that is available on the DCPS YouTube channel, or you can check it out at readyforpre.org. So if you need a little more guidance or some ideas about how to get started, we've got some resources available for you.
All right, and I'll go through this relatively quickly because I know we want to make sure we have some time to answer all those questions that have been coming in. So just a couple things about the enrollment packet and about some safety related policies. So you should have received your enrollment packet already. You have probably already filled it out and returned it to school. If not, we encourage you to do that as soon as possible. Some of those things that are in that enrollment packet that are really important that school has by day 1 is the Universal Health Certificate, just making sure that your child is up to date on their well child visit and their immunizations as well. And also an oral health assessment, which ensures that your child has had a recent dental exam. There's also information that you can fill out if your child requires medication to be administered throughout the school day or has an EpiPen. You'll see in that packet a medication and treatment form. And similarly, if your child has any dietary restrictions or accommodations, allergies or anything like that, there's a form in that pocket. You'll want to make sure in that packet, want to make sure to fill out that form before the first day of school so that your school has that information. We also recommend that you share that type of information specifically with your child's teacher. They'll be able to see what's in the packet as well, but it's always a good idea to bring that up with your teacher as well if your child does have allergies or something like that, or a particular health concern that you would like them to be aware of. And of course, there's also an authorized pickup form that will allow your child to be released to anyone other than their primary parent or guardian as well. A few additional pre-K specific policies that we want to highlight tonight. Children eat breakfast and lunch in the classroom. So one of my colleagues, I can't remember if it was Sarah or Lauren, talked about meals a moment ago. They do eat in the classroom, which is fantastic, both because it eliminates any unnecessary transitions, as we talked about. Also, the cafeteria can be a pretty overwhelming place if you're 3 or 4 years old and there's lots of bigger kids around. The acoustics are terrible, so it tends to be very loud. So meal times in the classroom tend to be a much calmer, more relaxing, enjoyable time of day. It's a great time for language, for conversation, for teachers to be talking to the kids and developing their language skills also, and developing their social skills also. We also mentioned special subject classes as well. That came up a little bit earlier. So with the exception of PE or physical education, when kids go to the gym, those special subject classes that include art and music, for example, take place in the pre-K classroom, so the children stay in a comfortable, familiar environment that's specifically designed for very little children during the day. And finally, last but not least, our teachers always maintain sight and sound supervision of children. It is very clear children are not expected to be out of their sight at any time. Many of our classrooms, for example, will have a half door at the bathroom so the teachers can peek in, see the children's feet, see their heads, that type of thing, make sure they're okay, and that they are never left alone and are supervised at all times. And there are always two adults present, the teacher and the classroom aide as well. At all times. So I will stop there and open it up for questions. So Drew or Lauren, I don't know if there's something that you want to call our attention to from the chat, or parents are also more than welcome to come off mute at this point and share your questions with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, so we've got a couple minutes. So what are you still wondering about? We'd love to hear. And Selva, if you are on from DC Child Care Connections, if there are any questions that you hear that come up a lot from families who are transitioning from community care into DC public schools, we would love for you to ask those of us as well.
Yes, well, we are certainly, we know that this is an ongoing, very important topic. And for every parent, first time is filled with all kinds of questions and perhaps some anxieties, but also some excitement, as some parents indicated at the very beginning of the session. So please, use this. You can use my email address, selvaspriggs@gmail.com, to convey any questions that I might then forward to our presenters this evening. Because sometimes you don't think about these things right away. They come up later. So please don't hesitate to contact us. What time are we? Are we at the end of our session?
We
Yes,
are
we have
almost
a-
at the
we're
end of our
approaching it.
session.
Drew,
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I have another question.
sure.
When will we know who the child's teacher is?
That's a great question. And I think that this largely depends on individual schools about when they communicate this information. So if you've tried to reach out and you haven't heard anything yet, please send us an email and we can get some more specific information to you. But at least a week in advance, because as Ms. Massey and we all mentioned before, there's opportunities to visit the school for either a classroom visit or a family visit or some of those play dates. So you should be hearing something around those times. I know as parents, the beginning of August, we're like so ready for this information now, and our teachers are just coming back from summer. So you should be hearing something, I imagine, in the next week or two.
Is there an email address that they should use? Can you convey that?
Absolutely. So I can put our general email address in the chat. Like I said, your homeschool is always your best bet for finding out specifics. But if you're having trouble contacting them, we're more than happy to support. And I'll put that in the chat again.
Okay.
And
There's a question on here about a stuffed animal. Did you see that question? Wanting the child very often will want to carry his or her stuffed animal to school as a source of comfort and to help with the transition.
Sarah, do you want to tackle that one first?
I would talk with your teacher. So me personally, I didn't mind students, in the beginning bringing a single stuffed animal, especially if it's something they're used to napping with, that would stay in their cubby. We would talk about it, stayed in their cubby during the day, in their safe space, but at nap time they could rest with it. However, every teacher and classroom is slightly different, and we definitely don't want anyone's stuffy to get lost or damaged at school. And there are things like markers and paint and lunch and breakfast in the classroom. And, we want to make sure that those very special stuffies and toys stay safe. So sometimes, and in many cases, the safest place is at home. But if it is something that really is, if your child, it might be a special circumstance where you talk with your teacher.
It may be something also that maybe in the first few days, I mean, I think what Sarah said is right. Always talk with your own, your individual teacher first, but it might be something in the first few days, and maybe after that they have one that's just for school. I'm also thinking about how much trauma would be caused if they forget to bring the stuffy home at the end of the day one day, and by the time you realize that the school is closed for the evening and it is bedtime. So think about those types of things as well,
Can I jump in?
please.
So I'm gonna ask you about the first day. Is there any like a transition time, like first day only 1 hour, on second day it's like 3 hours, or should I expect full hours from the first day?
It is full hours from the first day. And so, teachers are very experienced with this. As Sarah mentioned, there are often tiers that is completely normal. They usually don't last very long at all. And so what I've seen in classrooms, and Sarah, I'll let you jump in as well, from your perspective, is that oftentimes 15, certainly 30 minutes into the day, the tiers have dried up, and for the rest of the day, the kids do very well. Sarah, what would you like to add?
Amazing.
Those first few days are really about supporting children. I mean, not just the first few days, I mean, the whole school year, but really that first month, we are really honed in to supporting children's social and emotional needs. So our activities that we're choosing are very engaging. They're fun. They're designed to keep your child actively engaged. And usually children are very, very tired. They are very ready for nap time on that first day. Every year I have parents go, my kid napped. They never nap. And I go, they napped because we were busy the whole time. And then they come home and they're still tired because we really plan lots and lots of fun things to ensure that their day is full, and we want them to come back, right? You want to create a classroom environment from the first day where the child wants to come back the next day because they had so much fun. So yes, it is a full day, which might seem daunting, especially if you've never been in a full day program. But there is a nap, there is rest, and all the activities are just lots of fun. So hopefully your child comes home with lots of things to tell you that they did from day one moving forward.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're
There's a-
welcome.
I think that, we could probably go on. However, we have